Audie Murphy walked out of World War II with more decorations than any other American combat soldier of his generation. A boy from rural Texas who turned raw terror and impossible courage into a legend that Hollywood rushed to capture on screen. He played himself in To Hell and Back, stood before cameras, signed contracts, and became the face of American heroism. Yet behind that carefully lit image, there was a husband and father trying to build something far more fragile than a war story. An ordinary family life under the weight of an extraordinary name. In 1951, 4 days after divorcing his first wife, actress Wanda Hendricks, Murphy married former airline stewardess Pamela Archer. With Pam, he had 2 sons, Terry Michael, born in 1952, and James Shannon, born in 1954. He was determined, at least in principle, to give them what he himself never had: a stable home, a present father, and a future not defined by hunger or abandonment. But Murphy's demons did not retire when the guns fell silent. Nightmares, insomnia, a fierce temper, and financial pressures followed him into civilian life, turning their California houses and Arizona ranch into places where fame, trauma, and ordinary childhood constantly collided. Terry and James grew up in the long shadow of a man the country insisted on calling a hero. To the world, Audie Murphy was a symbol. To them, he was a father who could be generous and playful one day, distant and volatile the next. Their mother tried to shield them from the worst of the spotlight, avoiding the machinery of publicity whenever she could. Yet the legend seeped into everything. The visitors who treated their home like a shrine, the newspaper stories that turned their last name into a brand, the constant reminder that their father's story belonged to everyone else long before it belonged to them. Then, in May 1971, the narrative shattered. Murphy died in a plane crash in Virginia at only 45, leaving Pam a widow and his 2 sons fatherless before either of them had reached adulthood. A court would later award damages to his widow and children, a legal acknowledgement of loss that could not begin to replace the man himself. For Terry and James, the legend remained, but the living father, with all his flaws and complexities, was gone. Their lives from that moment forward would be written in the space between what the world believed about Audie Murphy and what they alone had seen at the breakfast table, on long drives and in the quiet after the nightmares. This is the story of Audie Murphy and his 2 sons, Terry Michael and James Shannon, boys who inherited not medals or movie roles, but the weight of a surname that America refused to forget. One would move through life carefully, protecting his privacy while remaining connected to his father's memory. The other would take on the task of actively preserving the legend, building a foundation to keep the record straight long after the war ended and the cameras stopped rolling. Together, their journeys reveal what happens when heroism becomes history, and history leaves a family to carry what is left. Number 2. Terry Michael Murphy. Number 2 is Terry Michael Murphy, Audie Murphy's firstborn son with Pamela Archer, arriving in 1952 at a moment when his father was transitioning from decorated soldier to Hollywood figure. Terry entered a household divided between 2 worlds: the quiet domestic life Audie claimed to want, and the relentless pressures of fame, trauma, and financial instability that followed him everywhere. As a child, Terry saw not the public hero but the man behind the medals. Charming at times, fiercely protective, yet often restless, exhausted and haunted by the remnants of war. Terry's childhood unfolded across California sets, ranch land in Arizona, and stretches of open road, because Audie rarely stayed long in one place. His father's intensity left deep impressions. At his best, Audie was playful, attentive, and proud, encouraging Terry to work hard, stay grounded, and avoid the spotlight. But there were nights marked by sudden silence, sharp moods, or long disappearances. Terry learned early that his father's heroism came at a cost no child could fully understand. The turning point in Terry's life came with his father's death in 1971. Terry was not yet out of his teenage years when the plane crash in Virginia stole away the man who had both loomed and faltered in equal measure. Overnight, The Murphy household became a place of mourning, a home suddenly filled with reporters, lawyers, and fans seeking pieces of a man Terry had barely begun to know. Audie left behind debts as well as fame. And for Terry, adulthood began with the need to navigate a world shaped by legal battles, probate courts, and the lingering expectations attached to the Murphy name. In time, Terry stepped into a quieter, steadier life, choosing privacy over publicity. He did not seek to become a professional custodian of his father's legacy, nor did he reject it. He carried it with restraint, maintaining a respectful distance from Hollywood myth-making. His appearances were few, deliberate, and always dignified. When he did speak, it was to correct exaggerations or acknowledge the complexities that made his father human, not to polish medals or inflate stories. He understood better than most that the man America wanted Audie Murphy to be was not always the man he truly was, and that both truths could exist without diminishing each other. Terry's legacy is not measured in public roles or foundations, but in steadiness. He lived in the shadow of a legend, yet refused to let that shadow distort his identity. In him we see the quiet response to a loud history. A son who grew into a man defined not by what his father achieved, but by how he chose to carry the memory left behind. Number 1. James Shannon Murphy. Number 1 is James Shannon Murphy, Audie Murphy's second son, born in 1954 and destined to become the child most closely tied to the preservation of his father's legacy. James entered a household already shaped by the pressures Terry had witnessed. The oscillation between calm domestic moments and the unpredictable undercurrents of a man still fighting battles long after leaving the front lines. But James, younger and naturally introspective, absorbed those rhythms differently. He grew up watching his father through a lens sharpened by curiosity and caution, sensing the fragility beneath the heroism that the world celebrated. As a child, James observed the two sides of Audie's life more vividly than anyone. He saw the exhausted veteran who paced through sleepless nights, the actor balancing stiff studio demands, and the father who alternated between tenderness and retreat. He watched his mother protect the household from intrusions, smoothing over moments when Audie's temper or depression threatened the fragile sense of normalcy she worked to build. These experiences did not embitter James. Instead, they instilled in him a deep understanding of complexity, the kind that would later guide him as the unofficial historian of the Murphy family. The turning point arrived with the shock of 1971. At 17, James lost his father in the plane crash that shattered the family's already delicate structure. While Terry chose a quieter path, James responded to the loss by stepping toward the legacy rather than away from it. In the years that followed, he became the central protector of Audie Murphy's story, determined to ensure that the man behind the reputation was not swallowed by half-truths, embellishments, or sensationalism. He immersed himself in records, interviews, correspondences, and eyewitness accounts, eventually becoming a key figure in separating myth from fact. As an adult, James worked closely with researchers, historians, and film producers who sought to portray Audie accurately. He answered inquiries with a calm precision, corrected errors with firmness, and refused to allow legend to eclipse identity. He contributed to the creation of the Audie Murphy Research Foundation, an organization dedicated to preserving his father's military history with accuracy, dignity, and transparency. Through this work, James ensured that Audie Murphy's life, both the triumphs and the struggles, would be remembered with honesty rather than idealization. James Shannon Murphy lives not as a public celebrity, but as a caretaker of memory. His legacy is the responsibility he assumed without ceremony, to defend the truth of a man the world claimed to know, yet rarely understood. In him, we see the final, most intimate chapter of the Audie Murphy story. The son who transformed loss into purpose, who guarded his father's humanity against the distortions of fame, and who ensured that the soldier, the actor, the husband, and the flawed, courageous man would never be reduced to a silhouette in American history. The story of Audie Murphy and his two sons does not end on a battlefield, a film set, or a parade ground. It ends in the quieter, more fragile spaces where the weight of history settles after the cameras stop flashing. Audie Murphy survived the war, but the war never truly released him. And the legacy he left behind was carried not by monuments or medals, but by Terry and James. Two boys who learned early that heroism is never simple, and that legends cast shadows as well as light. Their father stood before the world as the embodiment of American courage. Yet at home, he grappled with memories he could not silence, and burdens he could not set down. Terry witnessed the turbulence of that struggle, and chose a life of deliberate quiet, a refusal to let fame or expectation define him. James confronted the same history, and chose instead to guard it, stepping into the role of a historian, protector, and interpreter of the Murphy legacy. In their different ways, both sons honored the man behind the accolades, the sharecropper's boy who fought through Europe, the actor straining against the limits of Hollywood, the father trying, often unsuccessfully, to outrun the ghosts that followed him. Their lives remind us that the aftermath of war is lived not only by soldiers, but by their families. The trauma that earned Murphy his medals also shaped the home his sons grew up in. And yet, instead of allowing that inheritance to break them, Terry and James used it to form identities grounded in perspective, restraint, and truth. They stepped out from beneath the legend without discarding it, revealing through their own lives the full humanity of a father America insisted on mythologizing. In the end, Audie Murphy's legacy is not only the battlefield courage that carved his name into military history, it is the resilience of the family he left behind, the sons who carried his memory without letting it consume them, and the quiet acknowledgement that even the greatest heroes leave behind unfinished stories that only their children can complete. Through Terry and James, the Murphy story becomes not just a tale of war, but a testament to survival, remembrance, and the enduring complexity of what it means to be the children of a legend.